Absolutely. Our next guest is Dan Bova. He's the editorial director for a little website named entrepreneur.com. You might have heard of it, just no big deal. So, Dan, quite a long resume here. You might win the largest resume of the day here.
And that might be a count for the color of my hair.
So, editorial director for Entrepreneur Magazine, columnist for Gannett newspapers, so USA Today, etc., and former producer for the Alec Baldwin Show.
Yeah, so that's actually, Alec Baldwin Show is coming back in a couple of weeks, actually.
I saw that,
So
yeah.
people can check that out on Saturdays. So I was lucky enough to work on that. The executive producer, Mr. Jason Schrift, who's the man, brought me in to work on that. So that was pretty awesome.
And you were on Jimmy Kimmel, Maxim Magazine, a magazine I read a lot in my youth, of course, editor-in-chief for Scout. But now we're here to talk about advice for entrepreneurs. Is freelancing better? Is freelancing worse? Does it make for awkward conversation in bars when people ask you what you do?
Right. Well, it's kind of funny. So entrepreneurship, right? So, not even that long ago, most people barely knew how to pronounce it. I still have trouble spelling it, if I'm going to be totally honest.
Yes.
But
that's what spell check's for.
Yeah,
It sure
exactly.
is.
But, it's become this real lifestyle that people are kind of locking into. And if you say I'm an entrepreneur, like more and more people understand what that means.
Right.
It's so varied. One of the coolest things about my job is I get to talk to so many different entrepreneurs at all different stages. They're serial entrepreneurs. This is the 10th business they've started. This is their first time. This is their side hustle, etc. And it really depends on the person, what's good for you, whether I have a full-time job somewhere and I'm doing this thing on the side until it really takes off, and then I'll go do that. Some people jump right in. So it's your passion, your tolerance for risk, your ability to say, hey, I might not have a paycheck at this end of this month.
Tolerance for risk with the risk underlined.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very individualized.
I'm curious. So coming from an expert, I think people use the word freelancer and consultant kind of to mean the same thing. Is there a real difference?
So consultants will...
Sounds like they need to be paid more than free.
Yeah. They know how to sell themselves.
Right.
But, there'll be a consulting firm, so you work full-time for that consulting firm.
Okay.
So, it can vary so greatly.
Right, because I've heard people call themselves freelance consultants. I'm like, oh my God, what are
Freelance consultants?
Right,
Man, that gets complicated.
I consult with freelancers. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes, okay.
So what have you learned from this whole career in media? Because really the common thread here is media.
Yeah.
Through different mediums.
Right. So, that's how I started off. That's where I've kind of intended to be. I actually went to film school. So I think what I've learned most off is that, you have this sort of nugget of something that you love inside you, but you don't really know where it's going to take you. Okay, so when I started off, I was like, I'm going to be Steven Spielberg. Then, then I was like, I want to be a writer for David Letterman. That was like my big dream.
Well, you ended up on Jimmy Kimmel Live, so
right.
it looks like that dream came true.
So you do, but you find yourself in all different kinds of places.
But it's not exactly what you imagined.
Yeah, and you find out what you really are. Wow, I'm really good at that part of it, and wow, I really hate that part of it. And you sort of just navigate those waters. So the ultimate thing that I would say in terms of just trusting what. Don't try to convince yourself that you want to do something. You might have in your head, I always want it to be this, and then you start to do that, and you might realize that you kind of hate it. So just believe yourself that you hate it. Don't try to convince yourself that this is what you really want to do because you thought you wanted to do it.
Making a force fit.
Exactly.
So okay, coming from you, what is someone who's been very successful at creating their own lane? What is the one tip that you would give to someone who's trying to create a path of their own as well?
Oh my God.
I'm listening.
Let me ask somebody else that. I think it really comes down to just following and trusting that, as I said, if you like something and you feel passionate about it, and I hate saying that because it kind of like I don't know, it gets a little rote. People say, "Oh, passion, passion, passion." But what do you like actually like doing? And
Right.
someone actually once told me, when you're not at work, what do you do for fun? So for me, I was always working on a script or writing a short story or something like that. So it was, if I could get paid to do those
How do you
things,
monetize those things you love?
Exactly. So that, I think that's the number one thing.
Dan, I don't think the gray hair is a bad thing,
I don't think
especially
so
as a
either.
consultant. I think there's a
It has
that's
personality,
associated with a
character.
20% hike in your rates, especially young
That's
face.
right, that's
Gray
right.
hair tends to work
I actually
really well.
have a thick head of black hair, but I dye it gray.
Okay,
So that I
we
can,
won't tell anyone.
Yeah.
This is intentional.
It's the Anderson Cooper effect,
Right,
He was
exactly.
actually very young when they put him in that anchor chair, but people were like, "Oh, well,
We could
he
trust
seems
him.
somewhat seasoned, right?"
My kids don't so much see the wisdom in me, but maybe other people do.
Yes,
So
I
You
see
got
it.
something in
I
common
see
with
it.
Santa Claus, beardless.
Okay, before we wrap up, I have one last question for you. So entrepreneurs have very different ways of like starting their days and getting
Yes.
through the day. What kind of entrepreneur are you? Like, what does
Oh
your
my
day
God.
look like?
My day, so I have two kids, a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old.
Oh, God bless you, sir.
Yeah. So a lot of my morning is spent screaming at people that we're all going to be late and we're all going to die and you got to get out of bed. Blah, blah.
Right.
So I actually lately have actually tried to wake up like 20 minutes before I have to, just so I could have that like moment
Yeah,
of
those
like
20 minutes of
drinking
quiet
coffee
time.
and staring into space and not thinking about anything. I'm not a morning person, is what I'm putting out there in the universe. But we all have to be, unfortunately. So
Ooh, rough advice for the non-morning people of the
I
world.
am not a morning person either. Yes.
I wish I could tell you something. I wish I
am not
could
a
give
morning
you
person
some
either.
kind
but
of
that's,
magic.
That's great advice. So you give yourself a 20-minute buffer before you have to deal with the world.
Yeah, but sometimes you fall asleep during that buffer and then it just
Yes.
all goes haywire. So I don't know.
Yes.
Don't listen to me. That's my advice.
I still think it's great advice. 20-minute buffer.
All right.
20 minutes is in.
I'm
Yes.
going to write a book called that, The 20-Minute Buffer.
I will be a co-writer, co-whatever it is
10%
called.
royalty
Yes.
for Sandra.
Trademark right now.
All right, Dan, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us.
This was great.